Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Project Egg Show, where we interview extraordinary entrepreneurs. Now, today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Peter Goral, rhymes with coral, who is a brand amplifier and an extremely nice and impactful human being. Peter, how the heck are you today?
I'm great. This is fantastic. I actually checked you out. I saw some great videos that you've done before. It's a real pleasure to be one of them.
Well, the pleasure's all mine, honestly.
Cheers.
So, Peter, let's jump right in. What is your story?
In all honesty, I look at my life as probably a book, and there's a bunch of chapters. I've got stories about when I was 12 years old, and then there's a story that might resonate with people when I was an adolescent, and even another big change in as an adult, right, a mature adult. But I think possibly for the sake of the audience, just so they kind of understand sort of the character, I think I choose the middle ground because it was a time where my creativity came to the forefront. And it was around the 80s, and I was a regional director for a large national retail organization here in Canada, and we would have annual shows where they would present, what's the line coming up, what's the mission for the year, and really kind of try to boost the troops with regards to what's coming and how fantastic things are going to look in the store. But they have thematic shows. And these thematic shows, I mean, they had a big marketing department with lots of dollars throwing at it, video, everything. And like it was Hollywood. And I went away to the breakout session. And of course, they put you up. And it's a fantastic event. And then at the end of the event, you get a binder. And they go, all right, now go do it. It's like, okay, yeah, like those are marching orders. And I thought about it at the time, and I was looking at it and thinking, the experience that I felt was probably the most important component about that event. And I said to myself, I need to transfer that. This binder's not cutting it. So I literally unbuckled the binder and I repeated the show and I repeated the performance for my region. Oh, pardon me. That was a call coming in. Sorry about that. But in any case, so I rebundled it and I set up the stage and I really replicated the show. And that's really what I am. I think that, you take a message and you bring it over to your people. But if you bring it over with the same experience, you're much better off. Now, I'm not sure, but do you still see me?
Yes. Still
okay, good. Good. Excellent. So that probably depicts who I am. Never satisfied with just taking the plain and simple. Want to upgrade it, put it into perspective, and transfer that business image. So that kind of tells you about me.
Let's jump back into your childhood.
Oh.
Let's talk about what sort of family you were raised in and what your childhood was really like.
Wow. I was actually born in England, in the UK. And interestingly, not of a super wealthy family, like really sort of low, mid class kind of thing. My parents were European descent. I actually didn't know my father. I had a stepfather, so I never had the original father image thing working for me. And I spent 17 years of my life there. before emigrating to Canada. But the childhood was, remember I said there was a story around when I was 12 years old that kind of like hit home. And obviously I can segue into that for you, because I wanted to find a way. Something was kind of bothering me. I wanted to go do something for myself. I felt self-driven, and what I ended up doing was I'd go around my neighborhood and I'd knock on doors, and I'd do odd jobs for the older people on the street. But I didn't realize what I was doing. I was actually selling. I was actually developing some kind of little business for myself. I didn't even know that I was doing it until later on in life. I'd be knocking on doors and saying, do you have any wallpapering or painting to do? Because I'm a kid and I'm at school. I got all kinds of time on my hand, and that kind of thing must get in the way of you doing your regular day. And literally, I think it was that taking that burden off the neighbors that actually developed into a neat little business for myself. So that was, yeah, it was that I kept myself busy. I'm artistic. I would paint. I would listen to music. I'd do anything that drove me creatively. So
when you mentioned how you had a stepfather growing up,
yes.
Did you ever meet your biological father? Like, how did that actually come about?
No, I never did. I didn't even know him at all. And now both my parents are no longer with us. In fact, it's kind of an unusual situation, because my mother came from Czechoslovakia into the UK, but she was already pregnant with somebody else's child, and she met this other fellow that was my stepfather, also in England, who was in the Polish army and then came to the UK. So really, really mixed up Heinz 57 kind of approach going on here, because they were both kind of expats, and they'd go to they found each other at some dance or union hall or something, where the foreigners used to gather, and of course they came about, and then it was me. I came I came out of that, but I didn't know that he wasn't my real father until I was around 21 years old, and when my mother decided to tell me, because they were going separate ways at that time. So,
what were the things that were discussed at the dinner table? Like, what were some of those values that you all talked about?
I'll be honest with you, we didn't have that Norman Rockwell family, right? We just didn't have that. It just didn't go that way. I actually became a leader actually in that family, because both parents were out working, and so I had four other siblings, and I really helped raise them and really helped look after them and have really helped kind of bring everything together. I was actually thrown into adulthood pretty quickly when I think about it. I'm pretty early in my life, and I probably didn't have, the cool 12-year-old kid. When I take a look at what a 12-year-old's doing today, and then compare it to what I was doing, like my whole system goes into shock, because I'm thinking, whoa, they're enjoying themselves being this child, and me, I didn't have that. I actually worked in the home. I went to school. I came home. I worked in the home. I became part of the direction of that home. So meal times, I often cooked those meals, myself, because my stepdad was at work and my mother was at work, and They'd come home at odd times because they both worked in industry. And yeah, so wow, actually, you're kind of rattling me a little bit with that. Yeah, I've not been asked about that time in my life so much, and there's a little emotion starting to well up a little bit in my chest over it, because just simply just reflecting on it now when I think about it, and realizing, I know may sound like a go-to statement, but realizing how self-made I am from that situation.
Well, I think there's a lot to be learned from that, and I appreciate you really digging deep and sharing that, because unless you talk about it, how would anybody else know? And I feel like there are other people who may be going through that really could learn from the things that you've done, and that would really resonate with. So I appreciate you sharing that.
That makes sense.
You mentioned how you really had to take the role of a leader in your family growing up, and unlike most other 12-year-olds, you would come home and you would immediately start working in the house. You would cook dinner and really take a lot of responsibility on. Do you feel like that has shaped you as a person and has really contributed to your identity of self?
I'd have to 100% agree with you on that. In fact, I think it sits at the core, actually, of who I am. I've always been really quite giving, benevolent, to others. Let's face it, I had this duty, and it's like kind of a psychological duty. It's not like somebody kind of set me up and said, "Hey, go do this. You've got your brothers and sisters to look after." It's almost like there was this realization that I had, like, oh, these were younger people than me, and I had to help them, right? I had to help them live. I had to help them do their homework. I helped them do their, and never even thinking really about myself, for a minute of that. And I think that's what I just caught actually in my chest, was that moment. It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't do much for myself back then. It was more about giving to others. And you probably heard of, the statement about servant leadership, actually, today being really at the top of mind in some of the best organizations, where the actual CEO of an organization is more giving and more thinking and more caring about his wards or his employees. So they don't become employees anymore. They just become team team members and things like that. And I think I fell into that. I'm kind of an accidental leader, but it's amazing what nature will do to you. It nurtures you, right?
What sort of relationship do you have with your siblings nowadays?
Well, it's kind of mixed. And I think it's partially to do with the fact that we were half brothers. I was half brother to all of them, right? Because I came from my mother, but I didn't come from their father, because they had 4 children after me. And the strongest relationship I have is actually with I have a brother, Raymond, who I'm really, really close with, because he had an alternative lifestyle that came about as he grew up, one that I recognized, which was not thought of, respectfully with his, by his parents. And I took him under my wing, and I literally brought him out of the home and helped him develop and become the guy that he is today. And he'd be the first one to say that, I was more of a father to him than anyone else, right? So the rest, it's unfortunately, I have to say that the other 3 are somewhat estranged, to me at this time. But there's not, and it's not a good or a bad thing. It's just that sometimes that's just the way the ground breaks and swells, right? So
You mentioned the term servant leadership.
Right.
And I think we kind of dug into where that philosophy came from. But how has that manifested itself throughout your life since your childhood?
One of the things I think that I always did, I think it's obviously, maybe it's in the DNA from my real father. Who knows? I mean, I question that sometimes. But I think that when you give, you kind of develop this attractiveness about yourself as a person, and I find that trust comes really, really close after give, and with trust, or you get everything else, because it's sort of like the golden key, right, through the door. It's like, because if I trusted you, then what's left? Why should I doubt about, even if you were going to tell me a lie at this point? I wouldn't think it, right? Because I drank the Kool-Aid. I mean it on you. Something happened between us, a dynamic, and it's something that I've always done. And even when I spent time, because I have spent time in corporate life too, where I was responsible for a region and responsible for some serious revenue and teams of people, but I never forgot about, you get more. It's kind of, you get more with honey than you do with more bees with honey than you do with a swat. I think that was the old saying. And I always played by that rule. Still do.
When you were 12 years old and you went out and started knocking on doors, what was the impetus for that? I mean, I know you said you had a lot of free time on your hands, but why was that the thing you decided to pursue? Why did you do that?
It's something, like when you look inside yourself. If you're looking, I think most people do when they try to build a business. If you look inside yourself introspectively and think about the qualities that you own and the skill sets that you own, and how you could transfer those into a monetization arrangement, right? First of all, it had to have motivation, and my motivation was the fact that I had uncles and aunts in Europe, in Germany, that I wanted to go visit in the summer, and money wasn't always around. So I mean, I had developed something. I had developed some cash flow so I could go and afford those trips. And I think so. I already had the motivation. I knew I wanted to do something. I was artistic. I was creative. I knew I wanted to go and do something. So it was a matter of like just getting out of the blocks, and trying it. And I think it was more trial. It was more trial and error as to what I did. I knew I could paint, like walls and furniture and things like that, and do a really, really great job because I cared about it. And the way I did it, I was not your normal kid that would just splash it around. I knew what I was doing. And it didn't come from training. It was just some kind of inherent value. I know that an inherent skill set that I knew that I had. And of course, the other one was not being afraid to kind of step up and ask for the order kind of thing. So, I mean, I always found my way into, I'm an engager, right? I'm a connector and I'm an engager. So I never found difficulty. And I thought I would start with my neighbors because it made sense, because they knew who I was. They saw me every day. So, I mean, it was a matter of like, hey, it's Peter. I'm, from up the street. Oh yeah, I know. Yeah. And it's like, do you have anything to do? Do you have anything to do for me that, and it's not like I knew what to charge. It's almost, it came out, it kind of looked after itself. And even today, I still think that about money changing hands and the work. I say, focus on the money, and you are going to forget why you're doing it. You're going to forget who you're doing it with. You're going to forget your customer. It's just not going to work. The minute you take the watching the sales pipeline out of the way, and you take the hard driving sales thing, put that out of the way, all of a sudden some kind of dynamic takes place between you and the person that you're talking to. And they will seal the deal for you. You won't need to actually ask. They will say, look, this sounds like you're onto something here. It looks of value to me, and I appreciate it. And here's payment, right? And that's exactly how it. I know it sounds a little bit, mother had an apple pie, but the reality is that's exactly how it went. That's exactly how it came about.
You mentioned being very creative as a kid.
Right.
How did you realize that about yourself? Like, what happened that caused the thought to pop into your head, oh, I'm creative?
Well, I actually started even in grade school. I would draw. I would draw birds that looked like birds, right? They weren't stick things or anything. I just had this set, I just knew I had this skill to like copy and imitate and draw. And of course I worked it. And I actually did go to art college while I was in the UK, and I did continue some of it here in Canada. And I am quite a successful artist, actually. But I do it as a hobby. But I had a mentor that was my art teacher, and we'd spend some days together, some hours together, because he knew that there was a raw skill there and that he wanted to help me polish it. So I really knew that I could design, draw, and, kind of at least build impressions of something, And then, of course, I got the opportunity to kind of take some of that and attach it to the way I did things. It could have been like something that I was going to plan. I still do, today as a brand specialist, I create content. And when I think about it, like, it just comes to me. I don't actually bust my head to do it. I look at things and it just comes. It lifts itself into me. I know that I don't even have to really think that hard. I just have to kind of figure out what the motivation is behind this content and do it. And I still get the feelings that I did even when I was a younger person around, oh, this is really cool. This is coming together. I really like it, And then, of course, you get the affirmations, and because you get the folks around you saying, wow, that's amazing, right? So you go to the next step.
So take us through the chronology. You start your business, or what you later found out was your business, at 12. I assume you were also going to school at that time.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
What really happened as you were starting to get a little bit older, getting into high school?
In high school, I actually evolved into the arts. So not only did I do visual arts, but I actually evolved into dramatics, and actually became a prominent leader there too. I was in both production and actually involved in the cast. And it was generally a lead role, as well as kind of bringing the team together again. And that was all done extracurricular. This was over and above having to get the marks and get through things. And then some of the things that popped up in that time were competitions, awards, things like that. But that started to solidify the kind of activities that that you were involved in, and I became an award winner, and recognition for doing things that were outside of the box, kind of thing, outside of the norm, and to the point where I then became the editor of the school newspaper. That seemed to be like a natural, like everything was around dramatics, arts, visual, the whole thing. So it really, really evolved and became almost like a synergistic package of activity that brought me a lot of attention, but I didn't do it to get the attention. I have to say that. I want to say that loud and clear, because I literally did it from my passion and my desire to actually do these things. But then I got the attention of both the the teachers and my peers, right? So it was fantastic. Great feeling, actually, that is.
At this point in your life, how did you maybe balance isn't the right word, but how did you, I guess, work through and still progress as much and accomplish while you had all these things going on at home, and you were trying to do all of your extracurriculars and get the marks and have somewhat of have a life, like be a kid in some respects? How did that all mesh together or work?
That's a absolutely brilliant question, and it's something that it's well defined in me. I mean, I know today exactly what I did, because I utilized that my arts and the extracurricular activity as a go-to. It was my safe place in my childhood, because I actually didn't have a typical childhood, and we actually grew some animosity between myself and my stepfather as I got older, because I started to realize that I wasn't really that cool a person in his eye, because I really wasn't his child, right? So I don't know that he was actually holding that against me or not, but the reality is there were some undercurrents, right, that you felt. And I would actually stay home on weekends while they would go away to, say, a beach, go have a weekend away at the beach. I'd stay home, and I would, and even when they said, no, you got to come, I said, no, I'll stay home. I'll cook dinner. Don't worry. By the time you get back, dinner will be cooked for you. So that was always a good win there. But that gave me my spare time. So the time that I kind of emptied the house, as it were, I got my spare time. I got opportunity to read. I got opportunity to do art. Of course, I did my cooking, because I enjoyed cooking actually after a while, because I just got in the rhythm. And of course, I made time for myself to do the odd jobs with the folks down the street, and even take on more. I've just been that kind of I felt like a task magnet, right? It's like, whatever you want to doing, do it. I'll do it. And I'm still a little bit like that. I always have this burning desire to be really, really busy, and I keep myself that way. And the more I think about it, wow, even at this stage in my life, how those early days actually totally designed the way that you do things today. I mean, it's remarkable when you start, stretching and taking a look and looking for the dimension that's developed between what you thought you were doing and what you end up doing, right? It's fantastic. Thanks for the question. Actually, that was quite revelatory, even just for myself.
You mentioned how one of the things that you wanted time for was to read.
Yes.
And that's kind of the first time that's come up as we've been chatting.
Right.
How important was reading to you, and as a child? And then, I mean, do you still read now? How does that impact your life?
Most of the reading I do now, I've never read fiction. I loved fact, right? That's all there is to it. I loved reading about somebody's somebody's life or something that happened. I enjoy those kinds of stories, even if they have ugly endings. It doesn't matter. I enjoy hearing about what happened to people, or and how things are made, how things are developed, those kinds of things. So I was very intrigued by those types of books. Art. I was in, my go-to favorite was Vincent van Gogh, and I loved his aggressiveness in his painting style. And then I read his story, and I'm thinking, oh my God, like these two things don't go together. But it's amazing how sorry a life this guy led, like a really sorry life. And then to see what actually came out of this individual, that's actually it's almost, it makes you happy, and it disturbs you at the same time. And I felt that. In fact, only a few years ago, my wife and we went to the south of France, and we went to Arles, and I went to the asylum where he spent his last year. And it was kind of nerve-wracking for me, because I had involved myself so much and read so much about this man, and really give a damn about this guy, right? Just this style and the way things were. And it was. I remember going into his room and into the area that they treated them, and then into the courtyards, and it's like, wow, it was kind of spooky that guy actually walked there and lived there, and for me, it was really an emotional time. I know that it moved me. I felt it, and it actually shook me a little bit. So when I think about the things I read and the things I've learned, I mean, those are the kind of things, because I've now seen that. I read about him. I loved his art. I went to see the place that he last lived in. When I think about that full circle that I just created for myself, I mean, for me, that's bucket list material. Like, those are the kinds of things that I enjoy, and I like that actually almost about anybody, right? I mean, there are some people that I've met that I've wondered about, and then learn more about them, and find out, guess what? They had a worse life than I did. I'm supposed to feel better about that. I don't, because, but there are, like you said earlier, there are people who just are probably going to listen to this podcast and say, holy crap, I went through that too. I know that's going to happen, or at least maybe something to relate to. So, geez, I feel like I'm babbling. I should stop.
Please don't. That's the whole point of interview, is to hear the inner workings of your mind. So please share. But that's interesting how, and I think about this a lot too. When you study somebody and you really learn about them and their story, you almost get emotionally involved in them, and it's almost like they then cross over from this figure that about their accomplishments and you've seen their work, to like you start to understand a little bit more about what they were thinking about and what their thoughts must have been. And to me, that shouts Benjamin Franklin, right? And because I've studied Benjamin Franklin a ton, read a ton of his work and read up on him a lot. And everybody knows him for the lightning rod and the kite, and some of the other amazing things that he's done. But then when you dig a little bit deeper, towards the end of his life, he had a falling out with his son, and it just goes to show, like, yeah, this incredible person did incredible things, but they were people too. I mean, he had this dysfunctional relationship with the person who was the closest to him, and it was fascinating. So thank you for sharing that.
You just humanized him. That's really what you did, right? I mean, you took this person that's no longer around, who, for all intents and purposes, you were seeing a vision of him through somebody else's eyes, and then all of a sudden you made a real human being out of him, for realizing something about him that made him normal, right? And that's, if you think about the way life is, it sometimes I sometimes catch myself saying, why does it cost us anything to do anything? Why did we have to put this monetary thing in play? And I realize it's to kind of organize us. I mean, you have to be to some degree, and put some rules of of engagement into play. But in the essence, when you're dealing with somebody, there's no reason. I don't care whether it's a stranger or whether it's somebody you're trying to, somebody that you're trying to work some kind of transaction with, whether it be a friendship, a relationship, or a business, or anything. There's no reason for you to think anything untoward this situation. I mean, it could very well be that the individual on the other side of that table is actually worse off than you, or maybe has gone through something worse than you. And I think, that steps back and, of course, brings back into circle the servant leadership approach to things, because, you're just another human being. You just, and leader's not a title, or, it's an activity, right? And it's something you have to participate in. So the reality is, like, just take it and work with what you've got in front of you and get on with it. I just can't. I can't stand people wasting their energy on trying to find shortcuts around people and underhanded issues with people. When I think about how life's built and how short it is, and how fragile we are actually as human beings, why we are spending so much time trying to kill each other, beat each other up, beat each other across the finish line. I don't understand that, when we could actually probably all join hands, not kumbaya or anything, but run across the finish line together. And for me, that's always been a really, really great attitude. It's one that I grew up. I think I developed that in myself. Didn't actually get it from my parents. I know I didn't get it from my parents, but it's something that evolved in me. And I think it's because I realized, hey, I'm just a kid. I'm looking after kids who are maybe 2-3 years different, than me, and that's all, right?
You mentioned how one of the things that is frustrating for you, and it seems like the core of it is how people treat one another, right? Especially in business transactions, or trying to find a shortcut or workaround. What do you think is the solution to that? I mean, how do you fix a problem that, to me, seems like a systemic, generational problem that people have learned over a very long period of time from other people who have learned it over a very long period of time, and, so on and so forth? How do you fix that?
Well, I think that you do have to put them in some kind of space where they, first of all, are not distracted. The fact is that these things have to happen one-on-one. And I'm not suggesting that you counsel it out of them, but I think that what you do is you demonstrate from yourself how doing the opposite to what they're doing, how beneficial that is to both sides of the equation. And that's why terms like pay it forward, give first, those kinds of things came about because it's, and I choose to take that road in oftentimes. I was actually just on the phone the other day with a potentially new client, and I spotted something that I thought was detrimental to his business within the confines of his plan and with the confines of his operational effort. And I pointed it out to him. I don't care whether it's free consulting or not. The reality is I just gave him an opportunity. I said, look, if you just changed that up, you would be this much further ahead. And it's like, wow. That was like a gift, right? And it's like, but you see, it was meaningful. It's not that I just said it about something. I picked what I saw. I recognized this opportunity, and I picked and I saw this thing, and it totally bust down any walls that were between us. I'd never spoken to this gentleman before, ever in my life. But all of a sudden, it's like, Peter, holy cow, man, that was awesome. Like, next, like, do you see anything else? It's like really cool. That, like when you actually do realize that, because, and here again, that's a talent that evolved from I'd say from my 30s, because at that time I was walking through and checking stores out with supervisors of those stores, and I had this feeling, that when you go into a place and you kind of feel a buzz, there's a snap of everything happening, it all seems to be right, and my default would be, this store actually feels successful today. I think we're doing money, and I could bet you dollars to donuts that if they took a reading on the till, that it would just like, holy crap, we're having a great day, right? But I knew I could feel it, right? You know how you just know when something's either in place or out of place, those kind of things. I think that has transformed into now almost like you can see things that are actually not even physical anymore. It's sometimes a posture, or that in the person that you're talking to, that you can actually pick up on and say, like, you're out of sorts today, or your business looks troubled. Your business is troubled because you look troubled, right? I mean, they go hand in hand, right? And I think that sometimes people that don't understand the nuances of reading those pictures, they're not sure what to do. And thank goodness there's coaches and mentors and things like that around to help them out with the business.
Let's jump back into the point in time right after high school. So you graduated from high school. What did you do then?
I actually went to art college, and I only ended up going for a year because that was 1967, and that's when we emigrated to Canada, and so I actually got the taste, and then I was like upended and repositioned in another part of the world, because my stepfather had been recruited by a company that had operations in Canada and in Australia, and he chose Canada. He came in 1966 for a year himself, kind of settled things up. The company kind of set him up, a place to live, expenses, those kinds of things. And then the following year, after everything was really kind of settled down, they go and bring the rest of the family. Interestingly, it was a very peaceful year for me, the 1966. I'll always remember that as a very peaceful year for me. I actually had some breakout moments in my own personal life as a teenager. I was able to expand on those things. But it soon shut down, right? It became now another task for me, because now I was in a new country. Thankfully, they spoke English, which is great. But it still was new, and I was, as a teenager, if you're plucked out and taken away from your friends, and you take, because at that age, at 16, 17 years old, like, you are actually forming some tribal connectivities, like really, really strong. And so if you're pulled out of that scenario, it's kind of troublesome, and it certainly does play, upstairs if you're not careful. But I agreed. I went along with it. I could have fought it. I suppose I could have said, no, I'm not going, and I just stayed there and, like moved in with a friend or something like that. God knows what I'd be doing today if that happened, right? But never mind. And the reality is, I came and I said, look, I'm going to hang out with you guys for 2 years. That's it. I did. I just said, look, I'll help support you for 2 years. Get yourself moving. I said, then we're like, it's bye-bye. Hasta la vista. I need to get on with my life. And that's exactly how it played out. It's funny how I actually predetermined that, and I played that out to the T.
Once you had that 2-year window,
yeah,
what happened after that?
Well, I actually moved out on my own, became who I thought I wanted to be, which is self-sufficient. And I actually opened. I was going to college. I was taking some part-time courses at the University of Waterloo, and I was going to college at the same time. And I had some part-time jobs. In fact, I had 3 part-time jobs, which, like, most people would say, "Are you crazy?" I said, how did you fit 3 part-time jobs into that sequence, and get marks and get, and do all the right things? But here again, does that sound familiar? You see the pattern from even when I was younger. So all of a sudden now I'm here, and I'm just about to enter my 20s, and I'm all of a sudden that pattern starts to come again, where I'm busy. I want to do some things. I want to get creative. And I did. I had a job working for a dairy, where I'd pick up a truck full of milk and deliver it bright and early in the morning, then jump out of that and go. And I worked at a theater, and the guy actually made me assistant manager of the theater, because the people enjoyed working with me, and they actually liked me better than him. He was the owner of the thing. He was a bit of a brute of a guy, but he saw enough to say, "Hey, I think I'll put you in this job, because these seem to be doing better with you." And at the same time, I'm going to school and honing my skills. The biggest shift for me was I went to the college, and I was hoping to continue art studies. And I showed him my documents. That I showed the counselor my documents from the UK, and he said, "I think you're going to be bored here in this coursework, because the guy who's running the course here, he's not quite as good as you are." And I said, "I'm a child. Like, forgive me." Like, he said, "It doesn't matter." He said, like, "You're going to be bored here." And I said, "Well, what do you suggest I do?" And he says, "We have a great business admin course." He says, "I think you should sign yourself up for this 3 years." And actually, you know what? That guy did me a huge favor. He did me a huge favor, because he put some processes into my head around work, cash flow, workflow, things that you don't learn, anywhere else except in a systematic place like, a college, and it was like done, boom, boom, boom. So that when I came out, I was ready. I wasn't that ready. When I say I was ready to try it, I think that should be probably more what I mean. But I was ready to try it, and I actually opened a business of my own, and it was a design business, and it was associated with retail. And it was merchandising and window dressing, and I literally put myself out there. And within the year, I had 80 accounts throughout southwestern Ontario. I was flying. I was just this kid earning all kinds of cash, like nice car, nice apartment. The people, the guys like me, were all like, "What the hell? Is that guy selling drugs or what?" Like, it was kind of crazy. But yeah, so pattern again repeats itself. I go out and I'm busy as stink. What can I tell you? Yeah.
Now, it seems like you went from being a college kid who's learning about business, staying really busy, just moved to this new place, and then you graduate, and then you just explode into your new business. What
Right.
steps did you actually take? And I know you said you put yourself out there, but what
Yeah.
steps did you take to really grow that business and go get those clients? What were some of the actionable, tactical things that you did to make that happen?
Really, really great question. And in actual fact, it did graduate. You just don't become good overnight, right? In fact, I still say it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. I still believe in that. But I literally planned a few things in my head. I designed my own business cards. And I think, isn't that funny that we put so much emphasis on something as silly as that? Because we're talking, quite a few years ago, and where if you handed somebody something, it was a recognizable, a testament that you were actually in business if you actually had a business card. Today, you don't need a business card, but in those days, if you actually had a business card with an incorporated company and your name, and you're like the owner of the company, or the like, it pulls something together in kind of in your mind. And then what I did is I literally hit the streets. I went to every menswear store in my local town and suggested that they give me a trial period. Right? I never asked for money, not right away. I just said, look, I think I can make your showcase windows, and in fact your entire store, more user friendly, more experiential, and attractive. Like, because most places, this thing hanging on a dummy, and it. And I know that's all changed, but in my day, it was like the better the window looked, the better chances you're going to attract somebody into to take a look at this. And I had a style of my own, which was to really make it look real, like put a human value into it into the display. And so I did things that were kind of dramatic, and very quickly. In fact, there was one menswear chain of stores where the gentleman who I'd known for years, I did his windows. I graduated to doing more things with him. I would train people in how to package, how to put things together. It's almost like this crazy evolution that took place right in front of me, and I didn't even recognize it until after it happened. During the moment, as a young person, you just like are overly excited about what's taking place in front of you, that you can't say to yourself, and it's too bad you can't, geez, I should make a note of this, right? Or I should write this down, because it's going to be meaningful another day. Thankfully, I have a good memory, so it still was of value to me. But in any event, my whole life changed, right? Because I got this job, I developed a following, I developed a great roster of clients, to the point where a larger organization came to recruit me out of my business to help them. And that's literally how I got in. I don't know why I walked back into corporate. I think it was kind of something that, well, they obviously teased me a little bit, and it was kind of steady money, and it looked, and they threw a little Hollywood at me and what have you, and so, sucker, I went to the magnet and made them successful. But I never forgot about myself, because I was able to keep my entrepreneurial kind of like wild out of the box ideas. And I just brought them to an organization that was kind of a startup organization in itself. And so they actually appreciated the outside thinking to come in and start pulling some things together. And I don't know whether you can sense it or not, but I'm really passionate about this stuff, and passion sells, right? Every time. You don't actually have to talk about the benefits, and the features and things like that. Because like, if you got passion for something that you're displaying, you got passion for something that you're putting in front of somebody, that in itself sells. And I think they saw that, they saw it had a really good following. And of course, we spent 6 years together, that company and I, and they were actually quite good. In fact, we just had a reunion last, was it last November? I think last November we had a big reunion. So some of the guys are still going, wow, you were on mental case back then, but you did so many cool things that we remember. And actually, there were some people that actually stepped up and said, well, I'm so glad you were there because you were the making of me. So I've gone full circle, with some of these people, and we're still friends and we're still connected, and it's kind of it does build you, and it builds you as a person, never mind your career. It's just more, it's more meaningful when you think about the friends that you created, the work that you created, the things that you achieved, and I feel good actually about everything, from small beginnings, as they say.
When you and that startup parted ways,
yeah,
did you at that point feel like you kind of had a decision to make, as in, what do I do next? Where do I go in my life? I've come this far. I've learned all these things. It seems like you really built a name for yourself, both on your own and then as part of this bigger team. What was the mindset, the rationale at that point as to what you were going to do next?
I actually really quickly decided that I was going to be a consultant, and I got an opportunity actually. So when we did actually part ways, I did get an opportunity to get involved in live projects that where companies were doing transformational things, didn't quite know how to move that from this. I spent a 2-year contract with a company that wanted to open brand new stores in Western Canada, for instance, and I literally traveled like crazy all the time, back and forth between Toronto and Western Canada, and opened stores, hired people, developed systems, developed processes, trained people, brought, just literally led the charge. And the difference being this time, it changed up all the time. So I didn't just do it for fashion stores. And, there were other types of organizations, if sales-driven organizations that just needed some evaluation done, or actually one of them was kind of interesting. It just came up the other day, and it was the Corningware company, which is they were in Corning, New York, and they actually have the town named after them. They're now owned by a European company, but at that time they were doing an evaluation across North America about the distribution model and the supply chain and how things were being worked out. And I literally went across the country and evaluated the people that were working, the distribution, the sell through, and the whole things and everything, at the retail level, and then of course reported into the head office with my suggestions. And interestingly enough, those suggestions, although they were good, they didn't actually get played out because they were acquired by this big company from Europe within 6 months. So, but it didn't matter, right? I was more interested in the thing, the doing, the dynamics of evaluating a business, taking a look for those opportunities, those little opportunities that mean something, that don't necessarily have to cost a lot of money, but if you just did a slight inflection of effort with that, you got more out of it. it's not always about money. I think I made that clear. It's more about like you can make yourself really, really valuable when you can show somebody that it doesn't cost $1 for me to open my mouth and check my brain, right? I mean, those things are free. I monetize them by activating them, right? So and that's exactly. I didn't look back. I literally stayed with it. I did some recruiting. I did a lot of recruiting because you're always only as good as your weakest link in the team, kind of thing. And I used to attract people from other companies by virtue of how I operated the company that I was responsible for, right? So, and those things haven't changed either. So, I ran that and I worked that for quite a few years. And this only slight change that I made is I came into high tech because as I saw the way business was changing and the model, the sustainability model and the supply chain model all moved towards some automation and some other practices, as the internet became available. I watched it and I graduated toward it, and I made sure that I was always on that curve, right? I needed to be on the skin of that ball. I did not want to be left underneath it. I wanted to be on top of it, and I was able to weave those two things together, and even now when I think about arts meets science, I've always said that about real good marketing and really good, business development. Arts, it's a place where arts meets science and building those. Even when you build a relationship with somebody, there's an artistic way in which you display yourself, but you're playing with the psychology of the other individual and your own, because, everybody thinks that, you play games with me because, psychological games with me to get me to do something or, to pursue me or persuade me. The reality is I'm playing them with myself too, right? It isn't a spectator sport. You have to be full on.
So it seems like there's this long period of taking action in the retail space, in the tech space. You're bringing your creativity to it, and then this marketing component starts to just arise naturally. How did you make that transition, or I guess maybe package it or start positioning yourself as the brand amplifier? Like, where did that come in their chronology?
It was a real natural graduation for me because I saw, because I'd worked, like anybody else, I've done my share of cold calling, picking up the phone, hey, Mr. Jones, I got this great thing for you. Yeah, get off, and dismiss. We've all had that. We've all had to do those kinds of things. But I realized really quickly, that is not the way. That is not the future of business. And when I got opportunities I'd say, if we just made ourselves look a little better, I revert back to sort of my old learnings, like great looking windows, customers used to walk in, like what's changed about that, right? The reality is, if you make yourself present yourself as somebody that's attractive to listen to, talk to, be with, you're going to do that. Now, the reality is, sure, we want to sell things and we want to get money for them and we want to impress our clients and those kinds of things. But you do have to start with yourself. You got to take a look at, and I got a number of opportunities with some contracts where and I love them when they're they hit the wall, like the business hits the wall, or they're in it, they're stuck, they can't get through the ceiling, and they're doing so many dollars and they want to do 3 times as much as that in like, half the time that they've been in business to start with, so it's like, it's futile to start with, but you do have to temper that. But I would always, I started to look at the business as, in that way. I said, look, we got to make ourselves look attractive. We got to start putting out business content, showing that we are thought leaders in this space, right? Because that's actually what attracts people. Like, people want to know about great things that are going on and how easy it is to get next to that, right? For me, it's not just about looking at the Hollywood moments in your life. It's like, I actually could snuggle up really close to that and be able to feel some and experience some of that thing if it's done properly. And there are numbers of ways to do those. And then I would actually just continue developing relationships, pressing the button, making sure that I got out there, building nice looking things, good presentations, and making friends, making friends, not searching for cold prospects, right? I actually hate cold prospects, right? Because, in fact, they're not good for your health. Because if I have to drag you across the finish line, kicking and screaming, that is not a relationship, right? I want to talk to a person who says, "Hey, Peter, I get that. Yeah, I feel a little like that. I'm not 100%, so it's like, okay, so we're going to stay at the 10-yard line now and regroup and figure out what's the part you don't like and what's the part you're uncomfortable with, and and then you walk across the line with me." But people that just drive and watch Pipeline and look at the sales reports, I mean, come on, guys, that stuff's over, right? You literally have to build those friendships, those relationships, those trusted advisor roles, right? And that's what I've been able to do all along. And when I got to do it in the tech business, there's more money in that space, right? Like that's really the win, is that you just 10x'd everything, if you think about it, by putting something really grassroots practical into play, that brings you this amazing result. But you need passion. You got to get it. You still all need those raw things, right? You need passion. You got to get up in the morning. You got to put yourself out there, right? And so when I see things like eggheads still on LinkedIn that want to talk to me, I think, are you kidding me? I don't even know what you look like. Like, why would I want to do business with you? Like, for God's sakes, start by putting your picture up there, so I'm that kind of I know I'm devout at being kind of mean to people that don't get it, right? I just stick it, don't do this, right? If you want me to look at you, want to do business with me, show me who you are. Show me what you give a damn about, right? If you tell me what you hate. That's a really good start, right? Then I know what not to do with you, right? In fact, it's an excellent start. And you've got, when I start working with clients and I ask them to think introspectively about what they think they are, it's amazing what they think they are and what they actually are, right? and I've been able to work out something from where they think they are and where they'd like to be, and then make suggestions, not forcing, but make suggestions about ways to get across the finish line, happy, composed, and continue to attract business. So I'm in full force right now. Literally been at this thing for about 6 years, where I've actually worked in organizations where taken full contracts in just to lift the experience of the operation. In fact, I was in charge of client experience in the one role, because that was the most meaningful thing, and it was to the solution. Didn't matter what we were doing for that client. It's how did you feel? If you felt great, chances are that we were going to keep you as a client, and you probably even refer new ones to us, right?
So, just as a quick caveat here, when you were speaking about eggheads, hopefully you didn't mean Project Egg people, because, I love those people, and I'm going to bat for them. But anyways, you mentioned some really cool things, and there are two in particular that I really want to dive into. The first is you talked about how one of the core things that you help businesses do or help people do is to position themselves as an authority in their space. Put out content, position yourself as an authority. How do you do that? What's your philosophy on actually executing?
I always tell them that they have to get down to the core of who they are. I have a very simple process. It's 3 stages. Like literally, you have to build awareness. You can't come out of the blocks selling. It just doesn't work that way. If nobody knows you, nobody knows you. Like, and that's all there is to it. But to start a brand, everyone's got a brand. You've got a brand. I've got a brand, and it's as much a part of our DNA as anything. It's like, I will respond to certain things a certain way, probably different than you, but I need to understand those thresholds that I have. I need to understand the thresholds I have for pain. I need to understand the thresholds I have for work, for finance, for being without money, for being without food. I want to know all the triggers, right? Because those are the patterns that evolve in life, and we've probably discovered that just in this conversation with myself today, that things haven't changed much; they've just morphed, right? So the patterns that that you've come through, and I don't care how long you've been in business, and I don't care how introverted you are, because I will actually help you come out of that shell, because I will show you how simple it is by creating kind of an entity of who you really are. I do have some clients who don't like the platform. They don't like to speak. In which case, what I do is I ghostwrite, and I actually speak on their behalf. And often when I'm socializing the business, I'm having conversations sometimes with myself. But that's okay, because they will evolve when they see how simple it is, because I dumb everything down to who are you? Why do you like that? And tell people, like, don't get in your own way. Tell people that you don't like something. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has a great opinion, and you can become an authority sometimes just on telling people that you don't like things, right? That's common, right? I mean, there are so many on this, anti that going on around, right? Because people are saying, hey, I don't want to be normal. That doesn't look normal. I want to be myself. I want clients to be themselves. Even if they're running a big company, I want them to show, my effort is to get them to show the person behind the company, because I also think, and I believe, and I argue that the people that actually buy from this company would do it quicker and better if they understood the value of the ownership and leadership of that organization. I work on that. I mean, I spend an inordinate amount of time on that component itself. My strategy sessions with my clients are hours long. I'm committed until they have that aha moment. And sometimes that aha moment doesn't come even until we've actually got some kind of program in play, where I'm starting to show them off, on their LinkedIn, and they're saying, "Oh my God, I got more people that they want to know something about me." And I'm thinking, yeah, and your problem is, right? I'm thinking, guys, I just put a new client up maybe 3 or 4 days ago, right? Egghead, now great looking dude, with a great business, it's so meaningful, right? So people are going, wow, he's dynamic, and he's a very dynamic individual. This is what's killing me about this whole thing is that sometimes you've got these people who just don't know what they've got. But I start by being reflective of who I am, right? The thing is, I think that if I show them my vulnerability and show them some of this backstory that I've just shared with you and the audience today, I can't believe I did that, but that's neither here nor there. But the reality is, you do have to do that, because when you do that, the person comes to you with similar stories, and then the truth. The truth will out, as they say, right? So I get authenticity from authenticity. You get vulnerability from vulnerability. You get truth from truth. You don't get truth from lies. And I work on that basis. And so I don't go and do anything until myself and my client, whoever they are, has come to an agreement with themselves, not me. There's no money on the table at this stage of the game. They've come to an agreement that they are comfortable in their own skin, and it's time to show what they're really all about and brand them, because they've got that. They're living with it, and it's always unique. It's like much different than what you or I have. And guess what? There's an old statement that says there's someone for everyone in the world, right? And even if you only have a few customers or a few admirers or a few followers, you can still get some great traction, and you can still do some really, really good business, and if nothing else, create some great relationships with people that feel for you and feel like you and understand, where you're coming from.
Peter, I want to thank you so much for sharing all that. And to everybody who's listening, I would really challenge you guys and gals to go back and listen a couple times to what Peter's saying, because there's a lot of hidden gems there, and I feel like it's layered. I'm not sure I have totally gotten through all the layers yet, but I would highly encourage everybody to really go back and really pick through those gems, because they are abundant in the words that Peter shared. So thank you very much for that. We've talked a lot about the business side, your business journey up until now. But what else has been going on in your personal life at the same time?
It's evolved too. I mean, and not like, I think you're constantly growing, and sometimes you grow in things and you grow out of things, and I have 5 grown children who now have children of their own, which adds another dimension to the world, to my world, and the things that I'm called upon to do. And I see some of the, you see some of the duplication things, some of the replication things happening in their lives. They're obviously got different challenges, because, the world's much more advanced. You can get answers a lot quicker today for a medical problem. You can get, or even to buy something. You can buy something at the drop of a hat with a push of a button. It wasn't that way for me. So that adds a little bit of dimension. I'm married a few times, right? So I've been in and out of relationships. I'm fortunately very, very happily married to a woman who totally gets me, totally supports me, totally knocks it out of the park with me on a regular basis. She forever tells me, I'm your biggest fan, and which actually is quite motivating to me. It's actually more motivating than anything else that I do, to know that there's another person that says, you're my end all be all kind of thing. That's kind of a nice thing to do, a nice thing to feel actually too. I think I say that I never thought you could actually be as as happy as, and I know that sounds like a sloppy thing to say, but as happy as you could be, I am. I'm actually, when I think of all the things that I've gone through and kind of a goofy, mixed up childhood, with really no anchors, I had to go searching for ideas, searching for things, but I found them. I'm a curiosity guy, right? Totally. I want to know why things are the way they are. I want to know how things work. And I think that's probably the one talent or one driver that has kept me going, even in my personal life. Is like, I'm curious to see what's next for me, quite honestly, because I'm in the middle of some really cool collaborative efforts. I really woke up the super tribe over the last couple of years. This year's been phenomenal. I know that for anyone that follows me on LinkedIn, I'm a very prominent individual on the social platforms. I have a really good following. And I give every day. I probably give more stuff away free than I actually work for. But you know what? That's okay. It's meant to be that way. That's been the way I am. And I think if anything else, if my kids, I just want them to be I'd want them to be the same. Like, that's all. I think I'm just hoping that I've been the right role model for them. They are going to make their own choices anyway. That's life. But I'm hoping that, when the time comes, that they go, yeah, dad did really good by us. And, he always made sure we had this, and he does some great things for other people too. So, and I want them to be that and feel that way, so I don't know what else to say. That's kind of a top of the ceiling kind of statement, actually. Yeah.
One of the foundations of this show is connection. Connection between you and I as friends, as guest to host. Connection between you and the audience, me and the audience members with each other. And it's something that I'm fascinated with. I'm obsessed with learning how to connect with people better than I currently do now. Increase my understanding, right? So we talked about it a little bit, but I'm really interested to know, what is your philosophy on building deep, meaningful, and genuine connection with another person?
It is anchored in something that I've already probably touched on, and it's associated with doing something for them with like no reward, like not even thinking about it, right? I want to give this to you, and I won't take a nickel. Like, in fact, I don't even care. In fact, I'm going to give it to you because it's actually my best possession. You know what they say about a really great gift is something that you actually wanted yourself, and that you gave it to somebody that you give a damn about, that you cared about. That's it's that kind of feeling. And I still do that, and I don't even think about doing it. I just do it now, right? It's like getting up in the morning and brushing my teeth. And I don't even say, oh, well, I wonder how many things I'm going to give away today, because it's an in the moment thing, right? It's just like what happens in front of me determines what I'm going to give to you. I have this collaborator, a new collaborator that I've been working with in Michigan. And, he's as good for my ego as much as anything else, because I'm helping him do things. I'm helping him get things, but he's so soulful and so heartfelt. When he says thank you to me, I'm done. Like, stick a fork in me. Like, I feel like, holy crap. Like, I don't need any money. Like, I don't need any money. Like, he's just done me such a great favor. And I don't even know that he realizes it, even though I say it to him. I think that even further humbles him, right? When I say that back to him, and we talk a lot. And I've actually been to see him a few times. So we're working on some things together because I love to collaborate. I want to actually freaking take people from where the hell they are to another place. And I don't even think about my own journey from that place to this place. This is what's kind of crazy about it. And, like somebody'd say, you could get hurt crossing the road like that, right? And I said, I know. It's almost like I'm not even looking for traffic. I just want to get this person across this road. And I'm so devout to it. But you see, when you do that, tell me you don't want to be my friend. I mean, tell me right now that you don't want to be my friend if I'm going to do that much for you, right? Without even thinking about it and looking for a reward. And I connect that way because I find, even if it's not physical, I find something about that person that I can give something to them, even if it's in a thought. It's like, you know what? Did you ever think about doing this another way? Just like I did with that potential client earlier. And it's like, wow, I didn't. Holy mackerel. That's like 3 hours free consulting, like he even said that. Like, I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Like, so yeah, we had a big brain bashing session, and I got more out of like 2 minutes with you because you spotted something. So even if I didn't do business with the guy ever again, I can tell you, the next thing out of his mouth, if somebody comes along and says, I'm thinking of, I need to really get a leg up in my branding, and I'm not quite sure how to take my message. I don't know how to build my voice in the market. I guarantee you my name pops up. Has to.
What is your greatest theory?
Greatest theory? I'm not stuck on them. That's in all honesty. I don't theorize on anything, right? I really don't. I am a doer. Like I know I probably shouldn't say it, but I get shit done. Like that's all there is to it. I come out of the blocks every day. I don't actually sit on it, right? I don't sit and contemplate. I don't do navel gazing. That's not a really great sport. In fact, you don't even need shoes, I think, to even do that anymore. But the reality is, if you don't get out and get at it, you're not going to get anywhere. I say, even if you've got a soft idea about a business, why don't you test run it? No amount of theory, is gonna get it there for you. Like, I'm not diminishing the value of theory. It's just that it's not an application I care about, right? I'm into going and getting it, and I love when I can impress an individual enough to get them to go do the same. But I generally do that by leading by example. Say, by the way, I did this a year ago, and this is what happened, and here's the result. And then that's a good argument, right? Because they go, yeah, you know what? If I could just get past step one, well, let me help you past step one, because we're going to go walk in traffic together. Like that's how I look at the world, right? It's like trying to cross the downtown Manhattan and no traffic lights. Like, we're going to get across this street, but I don't care. And that's what we're faced with today, because we got bombarded with all kinds of messaging, all kinds of noise. And in all honesty, Ben, if you don't have a brand identity, good luck to you. Line up with the rest of the mechanics, right? Because it's not going to you're not getting anywhere. You need to make a definitive noise of your own. But that noise has to be like a very authentic flavor that comes through, that shows the real person, that shows how impassionate you are about it. And I don't mean by wearing your heart on your sleeve. That's not it, right? Wearing your heart on your sleeve is cool, but the reality is you've got to know that there's got to be some purpose behind why you're doing it. And if that purpose is designed on somebody else, the benefits somebody else, guess what? Chances are it's going to work a lot better than if you were going to be self-centered, end of story.
So, Peter, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing everything that you have. It's truly been a pleasure and an honor to share this time with you. Two more questions, and then we'll go ahead and wrap on up.
No worries, yeah.
The first question for you today is not the first question, but the first of the last
First of the last two.
Right. The first question is there anything about yourself that you think is an important part of who you are that I did not ask you about today? In other words, what did I miss?
I actually, you got pretty intimate with me, which was interesting, and told you more about my childhood than I actually thought I was going to do. So, which kind of, it's unnerving in a way, but I mean, but then again, it isn't. I don't think, I think my mission always is to unleash, and allow you to take a look, like pull back the kimono, so to speak. And I believe we've done that. I honestly do. I cannot think. The only thing I probably haven't told you is what my future plans are, because I do have some things cooking, and I want to hold on the hot item, because it will come. It's about to come out. It's just that I have partners involved, and we have, the way business is. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag until I'm, I want to be first to market with this thing. So that's about all. Yeah. But otherwise, I think I actually think you've done an excellent job of framing the questions to the point where I actually had to say something that I probably didn't even want to tell you. As crazy as that sounds, but you know what? It feels good. I'm gonna put I'll put the term psychiatrist behind your name in the future. Ben Gothard, psychiatrist. Couch potato. Oh.
Well, Peter, again, thank you so much. And the last question I have for you is a little bit of a question that I have for you,
Okay.
personally. I'm 24. I have a couple different businesses. The show is my greatest passion. What question should I be asking you that I just wouldn't think to ask?
I think most people, I'm just even thinking back to how I was at your age in the space I was in, and how people have changed over the years. And I know that they don't teach, no matter what good university you go to, they don't actually prepare you to walk across that busy, traffic-laden street. They honestly don't. If there was ever a theory that I have, it's that. You've heard of the School of Hard Knocks. Well, guess what? That's the moment you're doing exactly what you're doing, is where you've decided you're going to like pop out into the world and pop up and do something like Project Egg. I think that the only thing that I would do if I were you, and it's not a question, it's more of an activity, and I think probably you get some of the answers that you're looking for by doing interviews like this with people who have like been there, done that, and got T-shirts, other than the one just not a Project Egg T-shirt. That's all. But and that is actually, you're probably getting your MBA and your master's or whatever in life by hearing all these stories, like stories that date back long before you were born, even, right? And which is fantastic, because you're actually delving into some history. And I always think that young people should I'm not saying always listen to the older folks, right? But the reality is they should actually sit side by side and work side by side with some mature people in the industry, and watch and observe, right? And play around with it, like, because it's a crazy sandbox, is life, because it throws stuff at you. You're digging down for something, and you'll find something you don't like, right? You've got to know whether you want to bury it again, or or let it come out and get you, right? So there's no escapisms, so I can't think of a question that would say, hey, Peter, if I, how do I avoid this? Or you can't. In fact, it's actually best for you to hit face on. I would rather see you bump your head into something and kind of wear the bruise a little and know that it's going to go away, right? And then learn from the fact, the next time I walk into that room, I better duck, right? Like, those are the lessons you can't get from a school, but those are the lessons that you get inside, inside the big place, the world, the earth, wherever you live, right? And the real world is, it's kind of a crazy place, and it's even crazier, and like I said, I don't know why, when I think about our limited time on a green planet that's spinning around, and I'm thinking, like, there's got to be, like, when I think about those components that are going on around us that we have no management over, I'm thinking there's got to be a miracle out there for everybody, right? And I think that I can't show it to you, but I know that there's probably one for you. And I know you didn't pay me to say this, but I think reality is what you're doing. And because I did a little bit of background work, and I took a look at your profile. I've taken a look at some of the people that you've interviewed, and you've got a long stream of shows, and just your attitude. One thing I will commend you on: really good listener. Really good listener. I know you're smiling, but you are. In fact, you're not even. I don't think you've interrupted me once, which is like amazing. And in fact, because I talk a lot, and I try to practice what you're doing to me, which is like bringing more out of me by saying little. And in fact, that's actually, if there was one thing that I would suggest everybody work on, self included, is saying less, meaning more. And you seem to have that packaged really, really nicely. And like I said, I know you didn't ask me to say that, but that's something I've observed in my time with you today. So kudos to you for that.
Well, thank you so much, Peter. And again, I'm very appreciative of all the things that you've shared and the time that we've been able to spend together. It's been awesome. So thank you so much for that. And to everybody who's listening, I want to thank you all for supporting the show and for listening, watching. You guys and gals are the best, and I love you all very much. So thank you. Yeah, can't thank you guys enough. But yeah, Peter, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when you're ready, what do you bring in cards, or what do you? We're in show business, right? Regardless. What was the old saying? The world's the stage. That's William Shakespeare. They were all just players. Is there going to come do you have a curtain?
I should get one.
You should. I mean, it would be, and then take it back while I come out for a call. Fantastic. Yeah. That's been great chatting with you, Ben. I really do appreciate the time. Actually, I didn't think I'd have as much fun. It shouldn't be this, but it should be this much fun, right? This is kind of how I spend a lot of my day, is talking to people, goofing off with a few things, getting a little real, getting a little serious, and the outcome's business for both. For us, or at least a relationship. That's the minimum, viable, it's a minimum viable product, right? Out of any interaction. That's why I look at connections for that value, right? Minimum viable product is the connection itself, not necessarily something that you're going to get from it. If you focus on just the connection, everything else just takes its place, like it comes to you. But if you go past it and think through the connection, you actually don't get the connection. You miss it. And it's not by inches, you miss it by yards, right?
Well, Peter, again, I can't thank you enough. And for everybody who's listening, one more time, I want to highly encourage you all to go back and listen to this interview a couple times, because Peter's been dropping some serious value bombs, and I highly encourage you to really try to pick apart those really, really impactful gems that Peter dropped. So thank you so much. And everybody, this has been another Project Egg episode where we interview entrepreneurs, incredible ones like Peter here, so that you can build your business, create your dream life, and we can all live in a better world together. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you.